Goody goody.
All right. Welcome to Kitchen Sink Microscopy. We're back.
Live Crosscopy.
Our
Yeah,
first, our first like week off of not uploading or anything. Like,
I know. Yeah, that's crazy because consistently we had regularly uploaded
yeah.
stuff and we had a pattern and stuff. But yeah, we
And
needed
look
to.
where it got us.
I know.
Absolutely nowhere.
I know. Yeah. It got us like what, 50 cents of ad revenue, if that.
Right.
But yeah, so we took some time off. I drove down to Nevada, and you were, I think, just staying at home. Staycations are great. I like people always ask, when I'm taking vacation at work, they're like, "Oh, where are you going?" And I'm like, "Nowhere."
Yeah.
I just there's so much shit to do around the house all the time, and it's like, kind of nice to just have days when I can get up and just do some stuff,
Yeah.
organize things, clean things, not have to do anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's what I was doing. Just moving things around,
mhm.
getting things tidy and um, kind of just preparing for the next set of projects that I'm
Yeah,
gonna delve into. And
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm the same way. I it takes several days and stuff because it's like usually I'll do some organizing or whatever on the weekends, but it's not like you need kind of like a pattern of like, oh, I get up and I don't have to go to work, and then I get up and I don't have to go to work, and then you can start kind of working on things. I do lists all the time. I have several of these like LCD tablet things that I use for lists. Um,
mm,
and then I just go through the list and get things done. And of course, as I'm going, I end up adding more to the list. So as I'm crossing it off, it's like expanding and getting longer. But yeah, so basically, I think we're gonna kind of spin off from the lightning strikes twice that we did. I mean, we'll talk about probably all kinds of different stuff, but
yeah,
kind of like we were kind of surprised, impressed by the Ukrainians' military maneuver they just did, like a super crazy drone attack on
yeah,
Russian military targets, which it's like it's wild, like and kind of where things appear in the future, like what the future is going to be like, what how it should be, whatever.
mhm,
Because my thought is, we've gone over this before many times, but warfare, the face of warfare, is totally different these days. The old ways of, you have your army and you have your navy and you have your air force and whatnot, and you know these are forces to be reckoned with. Nah, not really.
yeah.
Not anymore. It's like all this expense and technology and stuff is basically useless to some hobbyists with that know how to operate drones and things. And it's like, I mean, even early on too, the Ukrainians and the Russians were using drones, dropping grenades on each other and
Yeah.
observing and stuff. And it's like they're kind of that sort of like negates almost all military technology because you
Well, like the thing about what Zelensky did with this is showing like really good sportsmanship. If sportsman is kind of the wrong word for a war, but
well,
yeah, what I mean is like he had a precision attack on military equipment.
yep,
You know, unlike Israel just like completely bombing every hospital they can. I think there's none left actually.
I
Uh,
know. I
and like when you have the technology to pull off a Trojan horse thing like Zelensky did,
mhm.
why not just do that? Like why if you have to go to war, why can't you just break their toys? Like
Mhm.
like just do
Yeah.
that.
Well, and the thing about it too is now, I mean, people in the U.S. are taking notice of it because it's like, oh shit, we could be susceptible to such an attack, and there's literally nothing we could do about it. Like some containers come across in a ship from some other country, and those are the Trojan horses full of drones that just come out in the middle of the night, and like you can't stop it. Like,
Yeah.
yes, you can destroy them. It's possible, but you have to know where they are. You can't necessarily easily track them. You could jam things, but you're also running the risk of jamming your own stuff. And they were just using like off the shelf cell signal. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, you could jam drones, but now nobody can use cell phones in the area. Like, and that would be problematic. But it's like, yeah, they can come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, and destroy, yeah, like a few $1 million of drones and bombs and stuff like that can destroy billions of dollars worth of military equipment or more. Like,
I,
imagine, like,
yeah. I kind of hope that this cripples Russia enough to the point where they back down,
mm.
and then instead of putting a suit back on, Zelensky's like, "All right, time to liberate America," and he pulls off the next thing, and
Oh man,
bunch
well,
of
yeah,
drones just like pick Trump up by his baggy suit and like fly him away.
well, I mean, that is certainly something, because like it changes the dynamic of warfare and what would classically be people would consider to be technology of war. And it's like, I hope, my personal hope from this is it pretty much makes conventional warfare kind of pointless. That like, oh well, at this point it's drone v drone basically,
Yeah,
or nothing, because it's like, okay, well, maybe rather than start getting aggressive with a neighbor or whatever, we'll be inclined to come to the table and discuss our differences or grievances or whatever. Because like, well, the possibility, I mean, imagine this was in scope, it was relatively small, but was very effectual. But imagine, rather than just a few trucks or trailers with drones in them, what if there were millions of such drones
right.
somewhere?
Hmm.
Like, there's nothing you could do. Like, it's, yeah, it's pretty wild. Um, but I hope that it kind of makes normal warfare kind of stupid. That
Yeah,
like, well, basically, if everybody's got these kinds of drones on hand, then nobody can do anything.
right. And yeah, I mean, you just keep building drones and blah blah blah, and Star Wars, the drone wars.
The drone wars, yeah.
And like ultimately, it would be nice if it just drifted that way, and then people were like, "Wait a minute! Like for thousands of years, we fought our wars human to human, and now it's just machine to machine. Maybe that will show people how ridiculous war is.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
why even bother? Why sink the money into causing another country to need to spend money to fix things? Like,
And then oftentimes it's the ones who did the bombing who do the fixing. Like,
yeah,
like the US like went in and repaired stuff in Japan
hmm,
after the war, and I'm sure it's going to be the same kind of thing here. Well,
in
like, I
Germany,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I would, what I would like to see, I think, is that conflict resolution be more akin to a movie I've probably talked about a few times. It's one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies. It's cheesy but really cool. It's called Robot Wars, or
hmm,
Robot Jocks. That was the second one was Robot Wars. So the first one was Robot Jocks, and essentially it's post World War III. It kind of centers around Russia and the US, but suggests there could be others involved. But essentially, there was a nuclear war and it really sucked. And people are like, yeah, let's not do that again. So if we
yeah,
have a disagreement, what they do is they have an arena and they take their heroes who operate these huge mech suits and they duke it out in the arena. And the winner basically wins whatever the conflict is.
yeah,
It's like, hey, yeah, that's a great idea. You bring in your champion, and fight it out in like a controlled environment, which is, you agree to the terms, like, okay, well, if my guy wins, then whatever, then I win. You don't even have
but
to go to war.
it's not actually a good idea. I mean, logically, looking at it, like what does strength have to do with well, the logic of your argument, you know?
It's a good point. Yeah,
Like it, like
true.
it should just be debate, like
Hmm.
diplomatic debates
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Like I don't hmm, I mean,
Trade
yeah,
agreements are
like
great ways.
herding cats, but I don't know why the whole world doesn't just send their delegates into the UN, like,
Hmm.
because I think it's only a handful of countries or something, right? Like just kind of the big players and then
Hmm.
some of the second world countries or something. But
Hmm.
like, if everyone just came into this room and brought their issues and like, all these third world countries could then, have a voice and be like, hey, you know what, we're really struggling with this thing over here.
Hmm.
People maybe help out with that. And then, like, we have things to offer too, like, because,
Yeah.
their particular geography might afford something that other geographies will not,
Well, absolutely. Every country has something other than Vatican City, of course. Well, they have religion, I guess, but and Luxembourg, a couple places probably don't have a whole lot of natural resources, but still, like there's always something that you can exchange and trade. There could be tourism is one thing. Obviously, materials. Various places have all kinds of materials that people want, and they
Mhm.
probably are willing to trade something for that. Like trade is really the key to peace. Like having a trade agreement with another country makes it really difficult to like you wouldn't want to engage in warfare because, or combat with each other because it's like, well, yeah, we run the risk of destroying the stuff that we want so bad, you know,
Yeah.
like whatever it might be, whether it's stuff that people build or stuff that people mine or whatever. Um, and
Well,
everybody can offer something.
there's
And
a
yeah, like
there's a conspiracy, I think, that kind of, I don't know, like keeps Africa in the state that it's in,
mm-hmm,
in like kind of tumultuous and unstable
mm-hmm,
and and
poverty
and
ridden.
and in reality, like they're being exploited for the resources that are there,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, kind of giving off this facade to the rest of the world that is just like a desolate desert with nothing in it,
Which
and
is totally not
but
true.
like could really be like the world power,
Mm-hmm.
like, as a continent.
Well, and that's the thing too. I One of the problems with Africa is the governments of various nations. Not all of them. Some of them are doing okay, but in general, these governments get in, and they're the ones that are exploiting. They're militarily controlling, almost dictatorially, the people, and keeping them down
Yeah.
while making them work and extract natural resources and whatnot. Um, and of course the workers don't get anything because there's these military governments that kind of control everything. But yeah, Africa's full of natural resources. There's a ton. There's no reason it shouldn't be very wealthy in many areas.
Yeah.
um, but of course conflicts, that's one of the things. It's these conflicts that happen. One dictator rises up, and then they control things. They say they're going to do this or do that, and then they don't. They just exploit people. Then another conflict happens, and the dictator rises up, like in various places, attack other places over bullshit. And where are they? They're nowhere. They're basically stuck in times past at this point,
Mhm.
all because of these conflicts.
Yeah. It would be it would behoove the world if people just kind of came together and worked to uh I mean a certain, well, a certain large level of subterfuge would probably be necessary, but work to find out like who's pulling the puppet strings in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and Zelensky their ass.
Yeah, yeah.
Hit them
Well,
when they
it's
won't even expect it coming. Like
Well, here's the problem though. It's so embedded. It's like the Hydra, you cut one head
mhm.
off, two more emerge. Like there's got to be a completely different tactic to circumvent this system,
Yeah.
and it isn't a violent one. That's the thing. That violence is how they control things. So if you fall into that trap and engage in that, well, you're ultimately benefiting the powers that be, the elites that are controlling things.
Well, except that they're 100% removed from the violence,
Of
so
course they are. Yeah, yeah.
bringing violence to them would absolutely show them, like just like punching a bully. Then
Mm-hmm.
they're, ow, is that what I'm doing to people?
Yeah, yeah. Except the thing is, you would need some kind of you would need irrefutable proof that there's a connection there, and the way they put things together makes their connections very tenuous at best. So it's really hard. Then they're going to just label you a conspiracy theorist or a whatever, an ist or something, and you're not going to get a lot of support in that regard.
Here's the thing about irrefutable proof. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Yeah, the way that governments tend to structure, uh, the reasonable doubt and where that line is,
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature, it's very important that it's done that way. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like infallible. Um, it- and there's a lot of bad people that get away. And then there's like a logical fallacy that arises from putting too much faith in that system, in that people think that that is the one and only way to discern guilt from innocence.
Yeah.
And like you might be technically acquitted of a crime, but it's still painfully obvious to everybody that you did it.
Yeah.
Like OJ, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
and still people would be like, well, no, you can't say that OJ's guilty because he was acquitted. And it's like, well, yeah, but
Well,
like,
that's
and
that's
the whole Fifth Amendment thing, or settling out of court. It's like innocent people don't need to do these things, but
no, no.
still protecting them, like,
Exactly. And well, people I think need to understand that there's a difference between like morality and ethics and the law. And just
mm,
because something's legal doesn't mean that it's morally just. That's the
usually
thing.
isn't.
But oftentimes, yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, there's some things that are kind of pretty clear, but then there's a lot of things. Yeah, there's always exceptions, and the elites use these exceptions to slip through the justice system,
Yeah,
and avoid any kind of real prosecution that's going to stick. It's like, think about it too. If you steal, I don't know, $200 out of a till at a gas station, you're going to jail, like,
yeah,
for sure. That, like, that $200, yep, you're going to jail.
yeah.
It's bad. Now, if you steal $200 billion, chances are you won't even go to jail for it. It happens
Right.
all the time.
Well, yeah, like that's kind of the point I'm driving at, is like our metrics for innocence and guilt don't need to be so rigid when it comes to assessing the guilt of people holding the puppet strings, because how effectual do you think it would be to go in there like Captain Picard, all everything prim and proper and just, and we're going to do this by the book, except they're writing the book,
Yeah.
so like they control the courts, they
Mm-hmm.
control, they can afford the best lawyers and blah blah blah. They're not going to have to do jack shit. They're
Well,
not going to
it's
be held accountable for anything. Zero
rules
ability.
rules for me, but not for thee, essentially, in
Yeah.
that, like, the system is able to worm their way out of any kind of prosecution. And it's like, well, yeah, how often does a various government agencies or states or cities do really awful things, and all that happens is, well, the taxpayers pay the fines. Like, oh yeah, so I guess you did something bad. Now I'm covering it. No. We need to hold them to a higher standard. That's what it should be. Like like the standard for anybody who has basically somebody who's got their finger on the nuclear button or is authorized to use deadly force in like support of law enforcement, essentially, or whatever.
Right.
They should be scrutinized even more. Like if they make one little tiny mistake, that should be a bigger deal than if I make one little tiny mistake, because I'm not one of them. I'm just a regular guy trying to live my life. I don't exist in some official capacity. So I
Right.
think the people who do should be held to a higher standard. And like, yeah, if you make a mistake, maybe get beheaded or something like that, like
Yeah.
something bad should happen to you because you were charged with taking care of people and you did the exact opposite.
Right. And that's that's a good point. Like what what other measure could there be to deter those at the top from doing the terrible things that they're doing? There's nothing except death. Like there's literally nothing except death that they couldn't just buy their way out of.
Yeah.
So like that's why lately I've been struggling more with this whole concept of violence is never the answer, and is murder always wrong? Like we're told it is, but there are situations where there's really no other choice if you want to prevent suffering, like mass amounts of suffering.
It could be. Well, and one could argue, and here just as an aside, yeah, I mean, we could say murder is wrong. Like if you were my neighbor and I didn't like you for some reason and I just came over and shot you unprovoked, I just like, I don't like the way you look and I shot you. Yeah, that's totally wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody can agree with that. And then you start to get into different situations now. I guess, is serving in the military and shooting your enemy murder? Because
Yeah.
it's almost the same thing. I don't
Yeah.
know the person I'm killing, yet the government is telling me to kill this person and they're trying to kill me too.
I mean, that's another thing that, I mean, I've been saying this for a while, that I don't really have faith that the military would back the people. And just the other day in LA, there was some peaceful protests going on, and then uh, Trump brought in the National Guard, and they happily went in and did their jobs and followed their orders and stuff, and completely passing over like the 10th Amendment and everything. And and it's like, okay, you just showed your true colors. Like you proved me right.
Yeah.
You can't depend on the military because they've been brainwashed into this blind obedience thing. Like,
Military, the police, like, well,
yeah,
and
well, we
voters.
militarized the police,
The
so
thing is, it's everybody. The voters also are they're brainwashed as well.
Mhm.
Like people following the system, because honestly, I think it is faith in the system. It is following this structure that somebody else has put together, which it has not been crafted to benefit you. It has been crafted to benefit them. And why do we follow it? Why do we participate in that system? Why do we play the game when the game is rigged against every one of us? And we're also pitted against each other in daily life too. It's like, oh yeah, you're on the red team, you're on the blue team. I have to hate you, or I don't trust you, or you're a liar or something. It's like, no. They want you to believe that. They want you to do that. It's because it's that conflict that allows them to basically pull the strings. And
Yeah.
Obviously, because it's our faith. It's the faith in those systems that keep them alive. It's like, think about it. Here's a good example: the church. Remember, hundreds of years ago, the church used to be really huge, like really, really huge. But
Mhm.
obviously, as time has gone on, that people have kind of become more agnostic or atheistic. And generally, churches are pretty small. Last time I was in a church, it was like just a handful of people there. Whereas even a couple decades ago, there were huge amounts of people. There's really nobody there, and the churches are kind of just like disappearing and
Mom's
fading
funeral?
away. Huh?
Was that my mom's funeral?
Oh well, yeah, that one. There's one. Yeah, there were hardly anybody there. Yeah, I'm talking about just like a regular church service on like
Oh
a
yeah.
Sunday, you know. But yeah, but the church doesn't have any power anymore. They're begging for for people to come. They're really struggling, and it's like, yeah, the government would do that too if we treated it the same as like, I don't believe in you anymore, and I
Yeah.
don't. I've lost my faith in government a long time ago because it hasn't done anything good for me. In fact, almost
Right.
the opposite. It's like there's no good in there. It's doing a lot of bad things all the time and taking my money, the fruits of my labor. That basically, I think I calculated that like one day out of every week, I work for the government.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe a little bit more if you account for like sales tax and all the other stuff.
Well, and then, I often think about how frustrating it is to pay into a tax system where they're completely just fettering your money away
Yeah.
and doing like bullshit with it.
Yeah.
And 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 there's really nothing you can do to avoid that because the system, like if you work for somebody, they automatically take it. You don't have a say in that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work for yourself and you don't pay it, well, they control the banks, so they just
Yep.
take it from your bank. Well, if you don't put
Exactly.
it in the bank, you don't make interest. But then that's where I stop and I think, you don't make jack shit in interest anyway.
This is
Like,
true.
and
Mm-hmm.
really, people shouldn't be depending on interest. They shouldn't, like, even in the Bible, it was like should not be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense when you think about math and economics. Like, money making money just for sitting there, it
Yeah,
doesn't really
yeah.
add up.
Now interest on a loan is logical, right? I'm extending if I give you $1,000 and you say, well, 6 months from now, I'll give you 1,200 back. I could be like, all right, well, that's a risk, but I'm willing to take it for the extra $200 I could make. I think that's fair. But yeah, just sitting there that
Well, yeah, but I mean that's what interest is anywhere, really, is
well, because
like,
the banks loan money
yeah.
out and so you're getting
And
some of that back.
and no matter which way you cut it, that's making money off of doing nothing. Like
Yeah.
yeah, you've removed some money from your account and handed it to somebody else,
Mm.
not doing anything. Like, you know,
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's one aspect. But I think you're right. Like maybe we should be less dependent on that as being like, oh, this is the way. But I'll tell you what, one thing that's really infuriating, like you're saying, tax money being taken and used for bullshit things, war.
yeah,
War is one of them. Like I don't agree with a lot of the conflicts that have happened, and yet I'm forced to pay some of my effort, my effort that I do, I work and I do things and I get some money and they take some of that money and then they build machines of war and engage in war
yeah,
and like if they're not engaging in war, they're planning a war, right? Like
right.
I mean, look at what the U.S. government's like. They're foaming at the mouth over Iran and stuff. Like, oh yeah, because that's the one place they want so bad and have wanted it
Yeah.
for so long. It's like, can you stop? Can we just?
Like when the world crumbles and a new system arises, we should definitely write it in early that
Mm-hmm,
if there's a war, taxes are shut down. Like,
mm-hmm.
anytime your country is engaged in war, nobody's paying tax. So
Yeah.
deal with the money you've got, and
Well, here's the
how long
thing.
it lasts, you know.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I kind of believe in the concept of like the militia, like basically every citizen being a pseudo part of a military, like a loosely collected force. But here's the thing, like Vietnam wouldn't have happened. The US would not, nobody would go over there. Why? What would you be going over there for? Like, if you're just somebody with a gun and a box of ammo, you're not going to be like, oh, yeah, we need to go attack this country I've never barely even heard of before. No, if the Canadians stormed across the border, then everybody be like, oh, okay, well, that's justified. They're shooting us. We better shoot them back and get them out of here. But like, apart from that, there'd be no reason to fight. There'd be no reason to have a military. It'd be very minimal, and you'd basically have you'd still probably need, because the rest of the world has a bunch of stuff. You'd probably need some fighter jets and I don't know, some boats of some sort, a couple things, satellite stuff. But honestly, like 99% of the shit that we have wouldn't even need to be there, because why? Why would we fight these people who have done nothing to us?
Well,
There's no reason.
Americans have, like, there's nobody alive today who had a relative that was alive during their lifetime that has ever lived through a time where we were attacked on our soil.
Yeah.
Or there was some actual war going on our soil, like the Civil War or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never had anything like that. Like, no. There was a brief blip on 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Which like wasn't even really a military attack.
And then ever since then, again, nothing. Like, we're untouchable, so
pretty much, yeah. Well,
so
yeah, I mean,
we don't have this concept that like all we need is just a militia, like because we think we've all been brainwashed into thinking that, yeah, we need to go be the world police. It's our as the strongest military in the world, blah blah blah, to go.
I agree.
Push things on everybody.
Now there's yeah, we're gonna yeah, that's the thing. It's like we bomb people to freedom, basically.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we basically only need a defensive force, just local defense, and maybe an offensive force for when one of our allies needs help, right? Like, if they're attacked, I think it's fair for us to go back them up, right? Like, China attacks Japan. Well, yeah, we're going to go there and we're going to defend Japan because they're our buddies. But like, apart from that, there's no reason to attack China on its own, like unless they attack first. And that's fair. And it's like, yeah, we just need a basic militia force that that we're just, so it's like we're scary enough that nobody wants to attack us. Like, okay, yeah, it's probably, even Japan, there's sort of this kind of, I don't know all the facts, like whether it's factual, I mean, but essentially the Japanese military didn't invade properly the US land because they realized, like, yeah, fucking everybody has a gun over there, and probably a lot of them, and they're all crack shots. So like, that would be stupid. So instead they tried other things. They sent like incendiary balloons and kind of sneaky things instead, and that was about it. But like, they didn't invade the actual land because, like, oh, it was real, it'd be suicide.
Going back to the Zelensky thing, I'm a little surprised that I haven't seen anyone besides myself link this to the Trojan horse story. Mm-hmm. But there are people calling it like Russia's Pearl Harbor, and it's like, wait a minute. That's a other thing. Like,
that's totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind, I feel it kind of paints Russia in the light of being like a victim, because the US was a victim of Japan bombing Pearl Harbor. Like,
yeah.
Which brought us into the war. That war is already going on. Russia, Ukraine, that's already happening. Exactly. Russia started it. So they deserve what they get.
Oh, and yeah, I mean, and it's a very, like we had talked about before, it's a very targeted precision strike that went specifically
Mhm.
after military targets. I mean, anybody, you can watch the videos, the streams from the drones where they're hovering around and picking out like what plane they're going to drop on and blow up. It's like, it's actually kind of funny because it's like they're just doing that with impunity. I
Yeah.
mean, like the soldiers on that base probably had no clue. They're like, what the hell? Shit's on fire. What's going on? And because drones, when they're nearby, you can hear them and see them, but like just a ways away and it's dead silent. Um, that's why they're so scary. Like it's such a genius method to use. But I don't think it's anywhere near the Pearl Harbor. I guess I could kind of see how people could say it, kind of, but like,
I mean,
yeah,
attacking planes that are on the ground, that's about where the similarity ends.
yeah, that's about it. Yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, Ukraine has already used drone boats to attack ships in the water,
yeah,
so that would be even closer to Pearl Harbor.
right,
But no one said it then. Uh,
right.
hmm.
Yeah, like, but
Well,
as far as like the sentiment behind Pearl Harbor, not even close.
no,
Not
no,
even
not really.
close.
I just honestly, I just want to see this conflict end. And the same thing with Israel
Yeah,
and Gaza. Like, it's all bullshit. There's
yeah.
there's no reason for any of this conflict. Like, people can learn to get along, even if you have differences. That's the thing.
There's
And
there's always something going on in the fucking Middle East.
mm-hmm,
Always.
mm-hmm,
Like forever. And that largely stems from religion.
yeah,
And I feel like maybe like I'm not normally an advocate for proselytizing the concept of atheism, but if anyone could really use like a dose of logic, it's the Holy Lands.
yeah,
Um, like guys, stop killing each other
mm-hmm.
over some book that
I,
some dude wrote in a fever dream
mhm,
and
yeah,
or a collection of dudes in a peyote hut or whatever.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
it's not worth it. Um, you're not going to get the rewards you think you're going to get when you
Mhm,
die.
yeah,
This life is all you have, and you're squandering it on
hmm
killing each other and living in
and
fear of being
the lives of your friends and family as well,
Mhm.
and the future.
children. Like
Yeah, the future of a nation could be in jeopardy because of these conflicts. And
for
like,
decades, I've been seeing pictures come out of that particular region of the world of kids like blown to pieces.
yeah, yeah, and that's
Why?
just so awful. That should never happen.
No.
Like it. Haven't we reached a point societally where we can have different views about things and still coexist? Shouldn't
Mm,
that be possible? Like, I don't care if my neighbor practices some weird religion or whatever, or doesn't, or whatever. I mean, as long as it's all voluntary, I don't care what anybody does. Like, we should have that kind of attitude about people. Like, yeah, you could look at something and be like, wow, that's really gross. They have this weird thing where they like every Saturday at midnight, they dip their toes into fucking peanut butter and then they lick it off each other's toes. Like, that's gross. But like, yeah, whatever. It's just gross. You don't like it.
hey man, they're dogs. Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can, even if you don't agree with something, you can allow it to exist and people to enjoy the things they enjoy, and have the beliefs they do. Like, I don't care if my neighbor's a flat earther or a young earth creationist or whatever. It's like that. I
did
can
you hear
still
about
be.
the guy that voiced a character on King of the Hill just
Huh.
recently was murdered?
Wow.
Um, the Native American guy, I can't remember his name,
Oh.
John Johnson or something like that. But he was gay
Mhm.
and lived with his husband and would get like all these crazy death threats and stuff from neighbors. And then somebody burned their house down, which killed three of their dogs, right? So they were coming to the house to like get the mail from the mailbox, which presumably did not burn down.
Mm.
And there was their dog's skull and leash just sitting there like propped up for them to see. And
Wow.
they were like mourning and crying over that. And this hillbilly drives up and starts yelling at them and then shoots and the this John guy, I hope I got his name right, dives in front of his husband, takes the bullet for him and dies.
Wow.
And they're not calling that a hate crime? Like, I don't even know if they're probably not like railing too hard against that guy, but
I mean, I honestly I don't know why there should even be any kind of difference. Like any kind of
right.
murder is hate, right?
Yeah.
You don't murder out of love. It's always hate. There's some
Hmm.
kind of emotional underpinning behind that. But I like why? Who cares? Again, it's like leave people alone. If they're not bothering you, why bother them?
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter at all what anybody does. Like I don't sit there and look at maps of like all the different houses in my neighborhood and who practices what faith or how many like same-sex couples there are. Like I don't fucking care. They're my neighbors. Hey, if they come over and they want like help with something, I'll be like, yeah. Hey, you need a jar of peanut butter for your toes? Okay, I guess so.
To me, here's what separates like hate crime in regards to murder, let's say. Here's what
Mhm.
separates hate crime from just regular murder, right?
Yeah.
A regular murder could be your own mental illness, like Ted Bundy or something,
Mm-hmm.
or a crime of passion, OJ Simpson, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're the type of person that, well, let's just call him what he is, like a bully,
Mm-hmm.
you revel in the suffering of another person
Yeah.
to the point where you push it so far that you just end their life. Like there's something so wrong inside of you that it just boils over and takes a life. And for whatever reason, depending on who the victim is, it seems like there's you know an unequal uh, treatment of the murderer in question. Um, like there were sometime during COVID, I think, somewhere in Georgia, maybe there was like the black guy that was jogging. Do you remember this? And he was just like walking through a house that was being built, just like kind of curious. I've done that tons of times because it's
Mm-hmm.
cool,
Yeah.
like seeing a house being built. Like I find that interesting. And these guys like rolled up and chased him down and shot him in the back from their truck. Like they didn't get more than the slap on the wrist, like why does shit like that get treated so much less with uh, scrutiny than something like
Well,
Luigi Mangione or something.
it's a double standard, like, and that is hypocrisy, which of course
Hmm.
to me is the greatest sin is hypocrisy. Um, like you have one standard that is applied universally for the same set of circumstances. If you have exceptions that are arbitrary, that's hypocrisy.
Right.
Like you can't, it doesn't matter if the person looks a certain way or has certain whatever characteristics, or they make so much money or they're so famous or not. You should treat every situation exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, and murder is murder. Like
Mm.
it doesn't, it really doesn't matter. And sure, maybe there could be some kind of wiggle room in terms of like explaining why, but still at the end of the day,
Yeah. There's always
taking
nuance.
another person's life, like whenever not in defense, like
Yeah.
when it's not a self-defense or a defense of others situation, it's always equally wrong. Like you should not, there are other courses of action that you could take. There are other routes to go down that probably should have been explored first before you go. That is the most extreme. You can't, like, if you steal something from somebody or you damage something that somebody has, you could give them money, like you could buy the thing again or build the thing again. A life cannot be rebuilt. Once that life is gone, that life is gone forever.
Mhm.
So it's the most extreme thing. And yeah, well, and
And
this
I
goes
mean,
back to
here's the
warfare.
thing with hate crimes, though, is like those are people, the victims, I mean, are people who are not harming the murderer whatsoever.
Yeah, they're
They're
just
just
simply existing.
different, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, and this goes back to war too, and we were talking about like religion and stuff. It a lot of war is based on a lot of these bullshit. It's almost, you could almost argue a lot of wars are kind of hate crimes. That
Oh,
the
yeah.
reason people are fighting these wars is because they oh, it's like you have a different religion, you pray to a different god. We don't like
You have
that.
a different philosophy of economy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like whatever it might be, it's like, okay, that's not justification for murder. And I would say in that regard, war that is aggressive against somebody for an arbitrary reasons is murder. If you are
Yeah.
partaking in combat at the behest of a government, and it's because of something stupid like that, you are a murderer. If you're acting in self-defense, you're not. Or if you're
Right.
acting in defense of
That's
other people, you're
that's
not
the
a
gray
murderer.
area with the military
Yeah.
because once you're there on the battlefield with people shooting at you, it becomes self-defense.
It is. You're right, but you should also criticize the politicians that put
Yeah.
those soldiers there in the first place. That, like, yeah, I don't like if you're taking fire and you've got to shoot back. Like, okay, well, yeah, but how come you're there to begin with?
Yeah.
You didn't decide that. It was some politician in DC that decided that, and you
Right.
got put on some kind of plane, shipped over to some other country you've never been to. You don't know any of these people. They didn't
You
do
know,
anything to you. Hmm.
in Star Trek, like the Next Generation, for instance, there would be these weird gray areas, right? Where there was a kind of a fucked up situation and somebody did what they thought was right in the moment, but it was technically wrong. And then when all was said and done, they had to like go to trial to answer for their wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was handled a little bit with kit gloves, like there's a mark in your record, but given the circumstances, we understand, like that's correct, right?
Yeah.
Address something equitably. Be like, okay, look, technically we gotta, you know, have a look at this and
Mm-hmm.
and make sure everything was as you saw it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, say, hey, like you shouldn't have done that, but the nuance, yeah, okay, we understand. So there's record of it, but we're not gonna like treat you too harshly. But when it comes to our governments,
Mm-hmm.
like there's never culpability. Like
Nope.
nobody's ever actually paying for the damage that they're doing.
Nope.
The the,
You know
the
who is?
politicians
The
aren't
ta- the
being
taxpayers.
held accountable for murder at all.
Nope. No.
They should be.
Or
Like
war
country
crimes.
goes to war, taxes should freeze, and then when it's done, the politicians should all have to answer for what they've done.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you had a militia system that was all volunteer based, you wouldn't have to, like, essentially the only way that people would engage in combat is if it was bleeding obvious that, like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I willingly will go over there and defend my friends in this other country, or whatever. Like, I guess Mexico's invading or something, who knows what. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go down there and defend my people because we're being attacked. But, like, you wouldn't have to force anybody into anything. There wouldn't need to be conscription. But the reason they have that is because most war is bullshit. And
Yeah,
they have to basically force people. And that's the thing. Like, yeah, once you're in the military, you've signed a contract, you're property of the government now. And
yeah,
you can't decide, like, oh, well, I can't, I don't feel right about this. Like, oh, well, your CO is probably going to pop you in the head with a
Right.
45, you know?
And the problem is once you're over there, the goalpost is on a freaking dolly and
Yeah.
it's like constantly moving away from you. Like,
Well,
well, we completed this mission, but now their government's unstable and we can't leave, otherwise this will
mhm.
happen. And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's bullshit. But if it was all volunteer based, it's like, oh, the only combat that we'd be involved in, the only kind of military operations would be ones that are clear cut,
yeah.
right? Like
Well, and
so
you
obvious.
could say, you know what, like I think this is bullshit. I'm going home.
Mm-hmm.
And enough people do that, the war's over.
The war's over. Yep, exactly.
Like
Yep.
that's the problem with all this brainwashing in the US military is nobody is allowed to have their own opinion.
No,
They're
where
not
they
allowed to
should. I
mention.
get
So
it. Okay, look,
they're the Borg.
I know pretty much. Now, in a combat situation, it's important to have cohesion and organization and like, okay, whoever's in charge is in charge de facto. Like, you have to follow what they're saying because otherwise it would be chaos. You couldn't actually conduct any kind of military operations. But that's like in the
in
small
in the
scale.
moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're talking like big scale, that's a whole different thing. And yeah, people should be allowed to question things. And I think like whole battalions should be like, wait, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What is this? This is stupid.
Preemptive
We're not.
strikes and all this stuff. It's like preemptive strike is a friggin' euphemism
Mhm.
for instigating.
Well, it is because it's like you haven't. It's like pre-crime.
Yeah.
Nobody's done anything yet, but you're thinking they might do something. So let's hit them before they do it. That's like if I thought you were capable. Like I don't know. Maybe I think. Well, I don't know. You might kill that person over there. So I'm just gonna kill you before you do because I suspect that might happen.
Right.
It's like, well, wait, no, that cannot be justified. Like
Like
that.
Minority Report already.
Yep, exactly. It is, and well, that's a cautionary tale there, as
Yeah.
many science fiction movies and books and shows are. That yeah,
Was
like
that Phil K. Dick?
that might have been. Yeah, I think. Wait, was it Dick or was it Heinlein? No, it was. I think it was Philip K. Dick. Probably.
I
He
don't
had
remember.
so many books made into movies. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Too bad he never really got to see how many of his books got made into movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
But
yeah, like definitely like I we're lacking in authors like that these days
yeah.
because we definitely need more of that, like more cautionary tales.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially as book bans are kind of piece by piece pulling away at the sort of foundation of because when you and I were in school, of course, we had to read 1984 and Brave New World and
Yep.
all that stuff. I don't know if that's still happening.
Yeah, no, I don't. I
Let's say,
don't think it
yeah,
is. No. Well, there were a lot of really good books that were difficult, challenging subjects and
yeah,
content that we read, and I think that's important. We need to do that, and we need to encourage critical thinking for sure. That because rather than like blind obedience to a system, and I think that's one of the things. It's like one of the it is like the attachment, this faith in government is very much like faith in a religion, that like people believe it's a thing not because it's ever done anything. Like you might believe in, you go to church and you believe in God and pray and all this stuff even though you've never witnessed a miracle ever. And maybe there's something that happened where they're like, oh, that's evidence that must have been God or something. But like, well, okay, that could also just be a coincidence, and in fact it
hmm
probably is. So like, government doing good things could be just coincidental. Like, it just so happens that every once in a while something good happens, but generally I don't think it does good. I think it does a lot of harm. And like, I think community involvement is a better way. Like, all of us operating just on our own with this sort of goal of like, hey, let's make the world a better place and start with ourselves, build up our community. and you know, when if you have the means, go out and help other people in other communities, bring everybody together. Like, we won't have conflicts at that point.
Yeah.
Even if there's disagreements, there's nothing wrong with disagreements. We like people disagree all the time, and that's okay. It's how you handle that disagreement that is key, I think.
Yeah.
And when you pick up a gun as your first response to a disagreement, there's your problem.
Right.
And this is me as a gun guy who has a lot of guns. Like, that'd be the last thing I would pick up. You know.
Got a comment. Sounds similar to Clockwork Orange that was based on an Anthony Burgess novel. Sorry, I type slow. Um, yeah, when were we talking about rape and ultraviolence?
No, well, then we were talking about Philip K. Dick and
Oh
Minority
yeah, yeah.
Report. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was another great movie, Clockwork
Mm-hmm.
Orange. Yeah. Ah, yes.
Absolutely.
Minority Report is Philip K. Dick. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. The thing is, like, I feel like I don't think I have a lot of Philip K. Dick books, and I do not have that one. Huh. Interesting.
Got
But
a lot of Dick books.
yep, that shelves full of dicks.
A bag of dicks.
Yep. Well, and I I think people, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but emotions are certainly a problem, that allowing your emotions to get the better of you when almost every problem is better solved logically and calmly and methodically. It's like, you're working on a car and something isn't working right, and you get all pissed off and start slamming things around. Yeah, that doesn't really fix it. In fact, it probably might bust a thing that you're trying to install or whatever. When if you just took your time, maybe take a step back, have a brewski, sit down, think about it for a little bit, and then come back to it, you might solve the problem better.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's a place for emotion. I try to caution people to be a bit discerning with the logical fallacy appeal to emotion
mm-hmm.
and not to confuse it with appealing with emotion, which is
Oh,
fine.
sure, yeah, yeah, no,
You know,
you're
when
right.
argument is geared towards invoking an emotion in the other person in order to lure them into your argument, that's logical fallacy.
Yes.
And it's not even so much of a logical fallacy as just kind of a dirty trick. Um,
I think you're right. Yeah, this is
yeah,
true. Yeah.
but an appeal with emotion is like important, and
Yeah.
and it can add strength to a very solid argument and
Sure.
say, look, here, this is not only a good argument, but like it has real impact,
Mm-hmm.
and that needs to be considered because oftentimes when you just read about a problem, you sit there in history class and learn about World War II, you're more than likely not putting yourself in the shoes of a Jew in Germany in
Yeah.
1939 or something. Like
Yeah.
you're not really connecting on an emotional level. Like
Mm-hmm.
it might get you a little bit like, oh God, that sounds horrible. But you're looking at a paragraph and you're not living years and years under this oppression, you know?
Yeah, and that's where being able to empathize is really important, and that's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And I yeah, as a stoic, like, I definitely believe that emotion is very important. It like, but it's a matter of balance, right? Like, do you let emotions rule you, or do you let emotions guide you? And that, I think, is the key. And that's where, like, all these hate crimes come in, where
Yeah.
somebody's willing to take another person's life simply because of the way they feel about that person or something. Like, that is wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know what the right answer is to fixing that. Like part of me wants to say that not expressing your emotions, like withholding them often
Hmm.
because like you should or whatever kind of creates like a pressure
Yeah.
inside and without releasing a bit of that pressure every now and
Mhm.
then, eventually it will explode. But mm, there's like also a right and wrong way to release the
This
pressure.
is true because somebody could argue, well, yeah, picking up that gun and shooting that dude was releasing that pressure. And I feel so much better now. Like, yeah. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
discussion though, because like in Stoicism, it's not a matter of not feeling emotion. It's a matter of understanding emotion and kind of like negotiating through the things that you're feeling, changing your perspective to say, oh yeah, okay, maybe there's no reason to get worked up over this because it just turns out it's nothing. And I'm just the way I perceive the thing is making me think that I should be feeling a thing about it when in fact you probably don't need to.
yeah.
But well, emotions are great. Obviously, it's a good thing. Like, but also it can be a tool of manipulation, and that's where like governments and previously religions did that. Got people
Mm,
whipped up emotionally to the point where they were willing to do really awful things in the name of that system,
right.
which like you would never do that on your own. If you lived on a farm and stuff, you would never just randomly grab a pitchfork and run over to your neighbor's house and stab him in the gut with it. Like, why? But no, when they say, oh yeah, your neighbor, he's a heretic, they're a witch or whatever, and you like got this emotional attachment to that, now you might be willing to do that.
But at the same time, and I think this is going back to the differentiating between appeal to and appeal with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Pretend we have no hindsight on World War II. We're in America in 1940 or something, and we hear about what's going on, and depending on the news outlet that we're receiving, and of course, even back then, it was even more restricted on like how fast news would travel and how
Yes.
many sources there were, and people back then probably had, well, they definitely had anything but the whole picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for us to look in hindsight and be like, that was clearly wrong what Hitler was doing, but people back then may not have actually had all the information that we
Oh,
have now.
they most certainly didn't.
Yeah.
In fact,
So it's kind of
we have
important
more.
that the emotion was there to trigger the action when
Mm-hmm.
it was needed,
Yeah.
because the information was lacking. So
Well,
the emotion can kind of be a buttress to information. I mean, it's less so today because information travels so fast,
that's true. Yeah.
but it's
But
also just as susceptible to manipulation and
yes,
bias.
and also emotions can get quite high very quickly.
Yep.
Like before, when information traveled slowly, you might read about something in the paper, but it's not something that you are witnessing in real time.
Yeah.
And now you can. And of course, a lot of times people will frame what you're witnessing in a certain way so that it kind of almost it's sort of setting the stage of like, oh, this thing that you're about to watch is this thing happening, and it's happening because of this, and now you see it and you're pre-programmed to assume that that's why that's happening when that may not be true. That in fact it could be not. I mean that happens all the time. So it's like, oh boy, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
um
now we even have situations where we'll have video footage of something, and people
mhm.
are like, "Well, we don't have different angle of video footage.
Yeah.
It's like, well, fucking A. Like,
Yeah.
okay, granted, stuff can be obscured from vision and
Hmm.
definitely change the rhetoric of what's actually happened. But how likely is that? You
And
know,
that's where
that's what you have to look at in each
that's
situation.
where critical thinking comes in. It's like you've got to be, we all need to be critical thinkers, and we have to
Hmm.
be skeptics. That like, especially, okay, here's the key: when you start getting emotionally connected to something or start feeling something about something, that's when you need to turn up the skeptic dial to max, because that's the time where you're going to get sucked in and believe something that didn't happen, or believe that something is a way that it isn't, because of course the powers that be, the elites, they want to control people, and they're going to take every opportunity to do that. And so, like, yeah, we got to be skeptical of stuff, especially anything that feeds into what you believe to be true. Yeah, be very, very skeptical of those things.
Hmm.
Because yeah, confirmation bias is, uh, well, it happens all too easy, you know.
Yeah, it's it's not an easy road to travel trying to suss out what's like mm, propaganda or something that was critically reported upon, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are, of course, like things to look for.
Yeah.
Certain phrasings of things should automatically throw up some red flags and everything. But at the same time, you have to be cognizant that that could just be poor writing. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't, the fallacy, right? Like just
Mm-hmm.
because the argument is poor doesn't mean the message is false.
Exactly. Yeah. and,
Um,
and that's where I think the problem is that this kind of stuff is not really taught in school anymore.
mhm.
So people don't have the right tools in their toolbox to navigate the world and all this information and stuff.
Oh,
Um,
yes, the Skeptical Inquirer was his a magazine that was great for that. I used to have a
mhm.
subscription to that. I wonder if they're still around
Oh
because,
yeah.
like, if they're still around, they are welcome to sponsor our channel.
Yes. Well, I think we fit into that category of,
Definitely, yeah. Like
um,
I follow some guy, Pissed Magistus, on
mhm,
Instagram and YouTube and stuff.
mhm,
He's definitely like a critical thinker. He lives somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure which country,
mhm.
but he's got a lot to say about America. And I definitely, living here in Germany and following the news of what's going on in America with a European viewpoint is
Mhm.
tremendously helpful, I think, for the circles that I run in because, I'm seeing things with a portrayal from a different perspective than everyone who's stuck in America, getting all the inward messages from the
Well,
cherry picked media sources
the,
and stuff.
the good thing is, in this day and age, even people living in the US can also do that too.
True.
And I
Yeah.
would highly recommend to do that.
Hmm.
Even like, if you want to understand something, you need to be able to see all the sides. So like, even for instance with like the Russia-Ukraine war, go to Ukrainian news sources. What are they saying? Go to Russian news sources. What are they saying? Go
Yeah.
to Ukrainian bloggers. What are they saying? Go to Russian bloggers. What are they saying? Like, and put it all together, because everybody lies. That's the thing. They're all lying to you in one way or another. Um, Even if it's just to sell product, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, we should always question. Well, I think, oh yeah, so they are still around, the Skeptical
Sweet.
Inquirer. Um, but
I wonder
it's
if they deliver to Germany.
probably, probably. Um, but yeah, it's important for, like, I don't know, anything that seems like, okay, if there's a news story about something mundane, right? Like, oh, a dog was stuck in a well and these two guys came and got the dog out of the well. Okay, well, that's not really an extraordinary tale. It's interesting, but like, okay, there's no reason to suspect that that would be incorrect. But when it comes to bigger things like geopolitics and larger things, okay, well, those are the things we should be much more careful to analyze thoroughly,
Yeah.
and not just take it at face value, in especially if it supports what you believe. That's the time where you got to be like, hold on a second, I'm gonna fact check this, do some research, dig in, find more information about this, because this is confirming what I believe. That is
Hold on.
problematic.
We have breaking news. Yes, the dog in the well reportedly likes peanut butter on toes.
Well, they better kill it then. Throw it back in the well, because that's just gross. Yeah.
It would be an interesting experiment to uh like purposefully put out propaganda, not on any level that would actually cause harm, but just to kind of track it
Yeah.
and see like how far it goes and how fast.
Mm-hmm.
And and like depending on the topic, maybe even um, that would change. You know, ever thinking like the scientist, because maybe something like that could be eye-opening to people, like to show them a statistic and say, like, here is how fast misinformation can travel,
Yeah.
and bear in mind that misinformation isn't always done on purpose. You know, like
Yep.
so that makes it even more dangerous, really. Like
Yeah, no kidding. You
like
could like accidentally,
friendly fire, like
yeah. Well, and that just goes back to what we've been kind of talking about, is like critical thinking is really important. And I think it's also important to not react. It's sort of like the step one in crisis response is remain calm. And because like oftentimes when it comes to goings on around the world, oftentimes things are neither as bad as they appear or as good as they appear. Like there, usually the truth is somewhere else, more often than not. But of course, the media and the powers that be will spin it one way or the other, um, and say, "Oh, this is awesome," or "Oh, this is terrible," when like, okay, well, it's actually kind of not even the same.
the dihydrogen monoxide folks did
Oh
that. Yeah,
yeah,
that was a
yep,
great one.
I
That was
remember that. Yep, that was that. Yeah,
that reminds me of your commercial about water.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Isn't it time we've had enough? It's like my hand in the bathtub and the glass like swishes back and forth, and people who start drinking water never stop until they die. Well, yeah, I mean, because
smoke cigarettes before they smoke you.
I think I have that. I can pull that bumper sticker. Yeah. Oh, it's too many. It's too many push pins sticking things down. Otherwise, I'd grab it. But I have the design on the wall. It's got like the '50s guy, like.
Nice.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I don't know the answer, but I, we definitely need to do something different.
Hmm.
We need a different course, and I think the course needs to be less statist and less um like religiosity, and more just community, building communities. Because honestly, it's like I don't have any control over what happens in DC, but I can tell you what, if I went out and started an organization in Tacoma to feed hungry people, I could actually do that, and I could affect change. I could create a nonprofit to help people who need, I don't know, they got a flat tire or something. Like you could totally do that.
Yeah.
um, Clean up the streets or something like that, like that's doable. That's a thing any human being can achieve, especially as a team when you get a bunch of people behind it. And then the more you involve as a community, the more you feel a sense of community, like, oh yeah, these are my neighbors, these are the people who live in this area, and we just did this together, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Like, and I think that's a good thing, and we need, and you could do that on a small scale, but you could also do it on a huge scale too. You could do it globally. Like what's his name, Mr. Beast, like team trees, team seas, and stuff like that, like planting trees and cleaning up the oceans. I mean, I don't know how much I believe that he actually did, but still, it's like, yeah, like that is the power of community. It
Yeah.
doesn't need a government. It doesn't need anything but just a bunch of people who believe in the same thing. Like, hey, let's go do this because this needs to happen.
Right. Uh, I kind of wonder if there's a way that we could. Well, here's my train of thought.
All right.
Uh, you had mentioned getting away from like a statist and religious outlook on things
Mm-hmm.
that requires critical thinking.
Yes.
Like all you need is a basis in critical thinking early enough in human development,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even have to like push anything, get up on a soapbox or any of that. Like all you have to do is introduce critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I guarantee religiosity would go down.
Yeah.
And that's not coming from a place of being like, let's get rid of all religion. It's more of a
No.
place like that's just the logical conclusion
Mm-hmm.
that people come to when they begin asking questions
Yep.
of what they're being told.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's been my nature. I guess I'm lucky that it was like in my genes that ever since I could talk, I was asking questions about the world around me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a filter like, oh, I'm not supposed to ask about this. No, I would ask. So I'm sitting there in Catholic school being the teacher's worst nightmare, being like, wait a minute, this doesn't really jive with what Jesus said before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and that seed grew
Mm-hmm.
and just it like some people might look at my experience in Catholic school with bullies and stuff and shitty teachers and say, "Oh, that's the reason you left the church." Well, no.
Mm-mm.
Like, I mean, I've had so many shitty experiences in my life at work, but I didn't just, oh, you know what? I'm just not going to work anymore because shitty experiences,
Oh yeah, because
like,
pizza, delivering pizza like that. Oh yeah, never
yeah,
gonna do that again.
yeah, like
Yeah,
shitty experiences are just part of living.
it is, and that's an important thing for everybody to understand. But
Hmm.
yeah, you're right. Like asking questions, critical thinking, this is all good stuff. Like,
But
I
how
mean,
is there a way that we can bring that to the children in the US? Like
or the world.
a
Honestly,
grassroots
the
way.
the
I
whole
mean,
world needs that.
honestly, most of the world is already doing it. Like here in Germany, they actually do teach that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but there's
which makes a lot of sense given the history here, right?
well, sure, and but there's a lot of problems, whatever they may be, throughout the world that need solving, and critical thinking is one of the kind of the beginning stages of solving those problems. and overcoming whatever it might be that's going on. Well, yeah, because it's like I think it's important. I don't know. I'll just my own self, how I kind of morphed into who I am today. Like I grew up in a religious, right-leaning household and stuff like that. Um, and I'm neither now. Um, but like I still can appreciate that. It's like, you know what? I yeah, you want to pray, that's fine. And hell, if there was a friend of mine that was going through some hard time and they wanted me to pray with them, I totally would. I don't know that I would believe it would do anything, but I would totally do that. Um,
Hmm.
I don't like it's fine that people practice various religions. I like there is a lot of things I don't agree with that people do, but like, hey, if they're just doing that on their own, I don't care. Like, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter to me. Like, I can get along. Like, you know what? We've got so many other things in common that these little differences are insignificant. Like, they really don't matter. And, like, people who want government, like, okay, you can have your government over there, just keep your government out of my house. Like, you want to live in an HOA, knock yourself out, go ahead. I would rather die than live in an HOA neighborhood. um
Yeah.
but that's available for people who want that. You want to have that controlled environment, it's available to you, and I don't judge anybody for doing that because that's what they want. um and that's fine. Oh, you'll probably regret it, but that's fine. um so
Oh yeah.
it's like, I think that's kind of an angle that needs to be had, is like, okay, I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers. I know what I want and in my life, but I don't know that that's the best thing for everybody. It shouldn't be. I shouldn't. What I want, I wouldn't expect other people to want too. I think everybody wants their own sorts of things. And we need a world where that's allowed, where that's okay. It's okay to be different and have different views and wants and needs, but also we need to be supportive of each other. That like, look, I look at life as if there is no safety net. I don't believe any of this shit is real. I think it's all a facade. It's made up. It's completely, well, like I said, nothing is ever as bad or as good as it's said, and I don't think that these things are that great. And so I take it upon myself to help other people, like when I can. Like, I give of myself to other people to be that safety net, to be like, oh yeah, you need help with your car, oh, you're short on cash and whatever, like, I'll help people when I can. And if everybody did that,
Yeah.
we wouldn't need any of this shit. We wouldn't need government at all. It's like, and it's direct too. That's the thing. It's like, if a friend of mine needs $20 for gas, I hand them $20 and they put $20 of gas in the tank. Whereas when it comes to government, they take the $20 from me and they're like, well, yeah, eventually we're going to give that person gas, but it'll be like 50 cents. Like, well, where'd all that other money go? They're like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know, somewhere. Look at this shiny building we're in. Like, well, wait. That's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, there is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts aspect of need and like emergency situations and stuff that a government can fill the need for, but um
So can a
eh,
church.
hmm?
So can a church too.
Yeah. But I mean that said, it's like it is nice to have a structure in place that that can provide something like that. But it could be done in a much more a la carte fashion.
Yes.
Like especially with okay, remember when I was talking about this integrity coin thing, which I ended up calling like Commercy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had the idea of this app where you could like get integrity points for like giving of yourself, being
Mm-hmm.
charitable and kind and honest and things like that. But there within the app could also be like a Craigslist sort of style place where you could be like, here's my problem, here's what I need. And then complete strangers could be like, oh, look at that integrity score. Yeah, I'm going to help him out. Total
Yeah,
stranger, but he's a good guy. I can tell.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
something like that would be perfect for a government to be like, you know what, look, here are the things we need charitable contributions for, like in
Mm.
your area. Like,
There's like basically you see the demand
yeah,
of how many people are
demand's not
needing
being
something.
met, the area grows, like,
Mhm.
so, kind of appeal to the neighborhood mentality,
Mhm.
like just be more efficient in meeting needs.
Yeah. No, I
You know?
agree. No, absolutely. And people, human beings, you'll find are very charitable across the world. They will give of
Yeah.
themselves to
But that's the
perfect
thing. If you don't
strangers.
know someone needs it, you can't give it to them.
Good point. Yep. Yeah,
So,
exactly. True. Yeah. Well, and I think one of the reasons why it's sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing where it's like, well, people think that we need government services to provide these things because if they weren't there, then there's no services. But like, well, there was a time when those services didn't exist and people still provided those things, like helped each other out. And,
yeah,
and so nobody would be inclined to help each other out because they're like, well, oh, the government's got it. They got it. Even though it's like, yeah, you ever tried using government services? It is ass.
yeah.
It is absolute ass. Like,
Honestly, I should try to develop that app because if you
mm-hmm,
if you if you follow that thread, if you say like, okay, look, here in this app, you can have people be like, you know what, I've got this rare disease, nobody's ever heard of it, there's no research into it, blah blah blah. You put it out to your local community in this app, and
mm-hmm,
people start raising money for it, that also becoming aware of it.
yeah.
And then with this age of connectivity, that awareness can spread way fast, like a wildfire.
And very far away too, to
Yeah,
places where maybe where you are locally, there's no means to solve that
exactly.
problem, but it
Right.
could travel to somewhere else where there
Yeah.
people are like, oh, damn, I want to help solve that problem. How do I
See,
help?
right. Like Zelensky
Mm-hmm,
making a modern version of the Trojan horse, this is a way to utilize the technology that we have developed
mm-hmm.
to vastly improve quality of life
Yeah.
for humanity.
Well, and when things are made more efficient, your dollar or whatever your whatever you contribute goes further because it isn't being hemorrhaged by a bunch of bureaucracy
Right.
or anything like that. It's like, yeah, you could directly pay somebody, or like maybe there's one middleman, right? Um, like or something like that.
Mm.
That's good. And it's like, it used to be churches did that back in the day, and they still kind of do. I mean, locally, the church I used to go to way back in the day, Life Center, there's days where they'll give away grocery bags of food. You just come up and they'll hand you some food. It's like, yeah, I don't believe in their God, but I could totally get behind that. Like, that's a good thing. A coworker of mine, um the church that he like occasionally went to, or maybe he didn't, I don't remember, but he had some car problems, and so he went to a local church, and it's like he had his kid and he's got to get the kid to school and do all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I need this like $1,500 repair, and they're like, yep, okay, paid, and they paid
Mm.
for it. And I
Yeah.
think he ended up going back and like donating, like giving them some money to, more than that back again to pay back into the system. Like, yeah, That's a good thing. I don't think it necessarily has to be churches, but we could easily have things like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, like when I had cancer, um, even though I was firmly an atheist, I more than once, I think, reached out to a local church to get help with a utility bill
Yeah.
because that was that's like a service that they offer for
Mm-hmm.
people in need. And as I remember, there wasn't like a whole lot of scrutiny into my actual need for it,
Huh.
apart from my word, like, hey, I've got cancer, I can't work right now, and it's winter, and like so
Huh.
I think that was enough. And of
Yeah.
course, yeah, people could abuse that and like, but you know, I haven't used it since.
Yeah.
Like
And you'll
even
find,
though probably could just be like, I still got cancer and still got
well, but you'll
rebuild.
find also, like my coworker, he went back and gave that money back and then some for the next person.
Hmm.
I like that. It's just like, we can easily have a system like that where we just support each other. Everybody supports each other. And at that, why do we need wars? There doesn't have to be a whole lot of conflict.
I think we need to start over on a new planet to make something like that really take hold.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I think
the
it's
rot is
possible.
pretty deep in the
It
soil here.
yes, the system is very entrenched and it's really almost impossible to get rid of it. But it is possible, I believe, that like you can't get rid of it by force, but you can get rid of it by indifference. Like it requires your participation and faith to exist. And so if you turn your back and just do it yourself, then it will wither and die and disappear. It's like, it's like there's somebody like coming up to you and, oh, you cut me off. Don't you know who I am? If you're like, nah, I don't know who you are. And they're like, I'm this famous person. Like, I've never heard of you. Like, well, that just, the teeth are gone at that point. They've
Yeah.
got nothing. All they have is themselves just screaming and yelling, like, I'm important. And you're like, okay, if you say so, crazy guy, you know? Like, so that, I mean, it really it could be dissolved very easily,
Yeah.
but it has to be something where there's a community system to support people, and we kind of build something up while at the same time turning our back on this hierarchical government shit. um and there you go. I Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
think about how much energy and resources are wasted on warfare too, like total bullshit things. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. How much stuff has been blown up
Yeah.
for what? For nothing. Like, there, what's going to happen. This conflict is going to end one way or another, and then they're going to build it back again. Like, okay, well, you destroyed it just to build it again. How does that
Right.
make any sense? It makes no sense.
Hmm. Oh, that's the thing I always bring up when people talk about mutually assured destruction. It's like, how much sense does it really make to even proceed with the destruction in the first place if your goal is to reap the benefits of that land, let's say? Maybe there's other motivations like religion or whatever where but even that, like, it's all about the Holy Land, like it always
Mm-hmm.
comes back to the fucking dirt
Yeah.
that we're standing on. Why, I don't know, but like,
Yeah. Well, and apparently in like the Russo-Ukraine conflict as sort of this Russian incentive to, like, you know bring back the Holy Land, essentially, even though it was Ukraine that existed before Moscow. And they were like a bunch of Vikings and shit. Um, so it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of dumb. But like, yeah, the mad doctrine is kind of foolish if you think about it, because it's like the second you put this all into place, now we have the tools to basically blow up the entire earth and kill everything. So, well, what I mean, we can't do that, obviously. The second somebody launches a nuke, it's all kicking off and everything gets blown up. So why even have that to begin with? Why don't we just I don't get it.
Here's an interesting thought experiment. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Um, did you see the Marvel movies like the Avengers Endgame and all that, like with Thanos and
I've seen clips. I have yeah.
are you familiar with the motivation that Thanos had? Like he thought he was doing the good thing
Yeah.
by eliminating half of the universe's population.
Yep.
He
Yep.
thought there was like too many resources being drawn upon by overpopulation and
Hmm.
just wanted to like snap his fingers and half the people everywhere are just gone.
Yeah.
Like what what justification do you think like in either direction on that argument makes more sense? Like
Well,
what
I think
wipe out half of everybody and just continue on with life as we have come to be used to it, or adjust to make sure that everybody has an equal chance to
I,
live and
I
thrive.
I think the latter is better because, like, okay, if we were a bunch of automatons, right, and we just followed a simple program and we couldn't adapt or change, and okay, then yeah, maybe you got to wipe out a bunch because like they're just essentially just resource vacuums essentially. But like human beings can adapt and change. We can learn things. We can make adjustments to stuff, and like obviously, so
Yeah,
why don't we allow that to happen as it does? And because people will figure out ways of solving even some of the most impossible problems, um, if you just let them do it. And so I would say the latter, like let things be, because it goes back to like things are never as bad or as good as they appear to be. Um, like, yeah, it might look bad, but things have looked bad many times throughout history, but they turn out to not be that big of a deal. Or things have looked good and turns out they actually sucked. You know,
yeah,
it's like, so we only find out in hindsight. So there's no point in preemptive strikes, so to speak, to bring things back.
yeah.
Because we don't know. We will only know when a lot of time has passed and we've like things have changed essentially. Oh, we have a couple comments too. Sadly, there are a lot of very religious science teachers. This is going back a little bit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a very religious physics professor in college.
Mm-hmm.
It was the strangest thing. He was so brilliant at communicating physics without calculus.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, pretty much anyone could understand physics. Yet he had this club at the college that he was a mentor for, Christians on campus
Mm-hmm.
at Tacoma Community College, and he would constantly bring in this guest speaker who was a young Earth creationist. And I'm like, how can you be such a brilliant physics professor and think the Earth is 6,000 years old? Like,
That is well, and even this is the thing. Okay. Oh,
dichotomy
I
for
got
sure.
I gotta readjust there my seating. Yeah, it's like I don't even understand within the Bible how somebody can think that it's 6,000 years old or 12,000 years or whatever people think. Because like there's a bunch of unexplained time spans. I've always thought like, and this is something that, in fact, when I kind of like conjured this up in my head, it started me down the journey towards like agnosticism and atheism. Um, but like, okay, well, there's these days in the beginning of like the creation story and stuff, and like, okay, well. well, God created the sun, I guess, right? And but so, but there are these days listed. It took a day to do this, it took a day to do that. But one of those days involved creating the sun and the solar system and this and that and the stars. And it's like, okay, but then what what does that mean? What is a day to God? Right? The sun didn't exist. There was no Earth orbiting. So what is a God day? It's probably like millions or billions of years. Who knows? So it's like it's asinine to think even if you just like take the Bible literally, yeah, the earth could be billions of years old. That's not at odds with the Bible. So I don't the young earth people just like blow my mind. It's like the flat earth people too. Same thing.
It took a day to build the city. We walked through
Oh,
the streets in the afternoon.
oh God, fucking love that song.
Had to stop in my tracks for fear.
Oh, I wish we could play that. Sting, yeah. Fortress Around Your Heart. Yep.
Oh, it's a great song.
That's an amazing song. Well,
Not
let's
when I
go back
think,
through
but
some comments here though. But yeah, I don't mind if it, like if somebody's a science teacher and they happen to be religious, that's fine. Teach your science and then do your religion.
yeah.
But they shouldn't commingle in the classroom.
Yeah.
Um,
If you want
unless like
to
maybe
read the comments real quick, I'm gonna
yeah.
take a quick piss.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So we have another two comments. Programs like Future Problem Solvers of America need to be expanded. I'm not familiar. I've heard of the name of that organization, but I don't know what they do. Um, and then another comment taught critical thinking in third through sixth grade, which I'm assuming means you were taught critical thinking, not that you were teaching critical thinking in third grade. Um, yeah. Future Problem Solvers of America. It's interesting. So yeah, those are the last two comments there. And Casey is in the restroom right now. So I will entertain you here. Hey. All right. Through oh, I see. Okay. Taught critical thinking through the Future Problem Solvers of America, right? I'm guessing. Yeah. I think it might be my turn to use the head as well once Casey gets back. At some point, we'll figure out a way. Whoa, that was weird. You were coming back and like your mic just appeared by itself, like because you have the background blurred and the mic just like popped in for a second.
Ghost
It's
Mike.
yeah, no kidding. It's my turn to use the head.
Yeah,
So
my
you can
old man
respond to some of those
kept
things.
me a little long. So were you already talking about the Future Problem Solvers America?
Yes.
Because I'm not totally familiar with that, but if they were teaching critical thinking through the third and sixth grade, I think that's awesome. Um, I I wish we could honestly make that kind of like part of the public education curriculum officially, but the state of public education right now is kind of in the balance, hanging in the balance. But of course, I think the powers that be don't want that critical thinking there because critical thinking is just as dangerous to politics as it is to religion. Politics and religion are kind of the same thing, honestly, uh, because as Erik often says, you put a lot of faith into politics, which is true, but there's also a lot of storytelling that goes along with it, and is not usually like it's usually pushing a certain narrative, and that narrative is usually there to benefit a small group of people. And I think you would find this in any in the core of any religion except for maybe Buddhism or something, which I don't even count as a religion. But anyway,
Yeah, same here.
I was just drawing the parallels between politics and religion and how critical thinking would be harmful to both. And that's probably
Yes.
why we don't have it in
Well, yeah. And as I was using the head, it occurred to me another thing that needs to be taught along with critical thinking: debate.
yeah.
There should be, like, debate should not be an elective, it should be a requirement that you
Oh
learn,
yeah.
that like you have a debate class or classes or something like that. Learning how to converse, how to express ideas and whatnot, and yeah, like the two of those things would go a long way to changing the world, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Whew.
and I also, like, I'm a firm believer in self-sufficiency.
Hmm.
And I think that's another problematic thing in school. They don't teach you how to be self-sufficient. So that automatically makes you dependent on these systems that you're told you need to be dependent on. That, like, oh, if these go away, oh, fucking all hell is going to break loose. Like, nah, you know what? If you could take care of yourself or take care of somebody else, I mean, well, we're all good now. Like, we don't need any of these systems. Like knowing how to do things, how things work, how to fix things, like how to deal with a budget or whatever, how to household kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of different things that no one's ever taught, and then they get out into the world and they're helpless. It's like, well, what? How? You ought to be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's some collective things that, what when it comes to infrastructure things or, communication, like the mail, for instance,
Yeah.
like Britain privatized their mail system and it's fucking horrible. Like, yeah.
Well, but then the US has a public post system and it's fucking horrible. So like it's I don't think the function of it being private or public is
It's a
that's
reliable horrible.
well,
Like,
the thing is, like, okay, well, the things that I want to get typically come through FedEx or UPS. Um the things I don't want, like junk mail, tend to come through USPS. So like honestly, if they go away, fine. It'll be all right. And but you're right. There are certain things that do sort of make sense to be kind of a larger, broader system. Certain utilities, like you couldn't have like an individual couldn't bring power to their own house from a power station. Um, but still, it doesn't mean it has to be government controlled. Um, it doesn't have to be. I'd like there to be competition, like multiple choices in an area, like two different companies or three companies competing for my business, and they're trying to give me the cheapest deal, the best product. Um,
I
and
guess there have been countries that did that, like privatized everything,
yeah,
um,
mhm.
but they didn't last long. I'd have to look that up to confirm the details on that, but yeah, like
It's
even power and stuff like
yeah.
that. Like I don't know how they manage the logistics of that, but
Well, it's because people are
small country
leasing,
maybe.
like the power company leases the land on which the poles run and whatnot, and they also, multiple companies are utilizing those things. So it's not just like power, but it's like cable, internet, fiber, like other communications, all using the same thing. So like you can also have private roads that would work just fine. Um, like on a local level, like my road just out front here could be easily managed. Me and the neighbors could easily pay to upkeep that road. Otherwise, you can have highways that are funded by businesses and they have advertising. or whatever, or they just like, for instance, roads going into big places like Boeing would pay. They'd be making I-5 as good as possible because that's how all their workers get to work and that's how they ship their things. So they're going to pay for it and they're going to plaster their name all over the place. It's Boeing Freeway, but like, I don't care. Who cares what it's called? Like, I didn't choose I-5. I think that's dumb. Like, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is the road being good. Like, that's all that counts. And but the thing is, like, you can have a lot of private things and have them work just fine. This idea that only the government can do certain things, I think is well at the heart of problems, honestly, because like we can do things independent of the government. Basically, anything the government does, we can do on our own. And there's a lot of shit the government does that we don't want being done. So we can nix all of the bullshit and just do the things we want to do. Like, I think everybody can agree that, like, housing and food and water and transportation, like all these things, these are important things. And like, I, yeah, it just,
I don't think like if things were operated more on a level like you're talking about, I don't think there would be war
mm-mm,
because there wouldn't be so much tribalism
no,
and and you know people getting worked up over the propaganda fed to them by the government interests that want to have those wars
yeah,
at our expense.
yep,
Um,
always at our expense.
yeah, because I think if you polled the entire like every single person in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the vast majority would be like, I would not like to have war ever.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like I think most people never want there to be war, and yet
mhm.
here we are.
Like millions and millions and millions of people dying and fighting over nothing. Yeah. Well, if it was all private companies wouldn't want to go to war. Like, you run the risk of losing all your shit,
But then
you
we come
know?
back to the Thanos question, like how many people would actually be on Earth draining resources right now if there never were wars? It
Yeah.
might be way more than 7 billion.
It could be,
Actually,
but
it definitely would be with all the millions of people that died that could have had millions upon millions of children who would
mhm.
then have millions upon millions of children as well. Like,
Well, now keep in mind too, those millions and millions of people probably could have developed technologies that we couldn't even imagine
that's
that
true
could
too.
solve problems. We could also, instead of building machines of war, we could be building starships.
Right.
There could be, who knows? Again, it's like it's only hindsight. Like, we don't
Yeah.
know what would be. And the thing is, there are really, I wouldn't say limitless, but almost with cleverness, near limitless resources on Earth to support enough people. I found out, like, on my journey down to the property in Nevada, it's the middle of the high desert, right? So it's like scrub brush, dust everywhere. There's like kind of nothing. Yet you can have a well. And like, there are lots of places. There's trees in the middle of the desert, huge green fields full of crops and stuff in the middle of the desert. Like, yeah, there's water out there. And I drove through, oh, I don't know, there were periods of time where I'm driving through desert areas for like hours, several hours, not a single human being in sight. Like, maybe somebody on the road, but like, there is rolling hills. Like, there is so much space out there that,
Mm.
and like my land, I have water rights, mineral rights, all that stuff. I can draw 10,000 gallons a day there. Like,
Wow.
that is a lot of water. And everybody can, like, there's more than enough water to go around. And like, that's the point. It's like there's so much space out there. Like
Can as in you're allowed to, or can as in it's possible to?
as I'm allowed to. So if I drill deep down enough, yeah, I can pull 10,000 gallons a day
Huh.
there. And judging by the farm that's kind of nearby, that's available. Not like that is totally possible.
Yeah.
And but like, we'll figure out ways. Like I don't know. I'd rather see peace than war. I'd rather see trade and people getting along, people asking questions, people exploring and stuff. That's another thing too. It's like we need to people need to learn about stuff like the rest of the world because you I've seen the man on the street interviews where people in the US don't even know anything about the US, let alone the rest of the world. So it's like, well, how do you expect people to think critically if they don't know anything? Like, I mean, yeah, it's like you can't know everything, obviously, but at least some stuff kind of have a general sense of where things are and like the history of planet Earth and things. Um, yeah, and it goes a long way, I think, to people getting along, to like understanding our place in this world, and that there's no sense, there's no reason to fight each other over something that we disagree on. That's fucking stupid.
Cobra Man, why are we even fighting, man?
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Well, we've been talking for almost 2 hours. Jesus. Wow.
Uh,
It's a good
yeah,
episode though.
there's a lot to cover when it comes to war and
Yeah.
all the shit that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we definitely touched on a lot of good stuff, critical thinking and um, just not even just in war, but like in education and politics and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
especially in war, like there's really no logical reason to go to war.
No. No, but some people will do it out of patriotism, but it's like, well, what even is that? What like
Patriotism
okay,
is a euphemism for tribalism.
no, it is. Yes. Yes, you're 100% correct. Yeah. Like, okay, I guess I speak the same language as most people in this country, but I don't consider myself like a USian or anything like that. Like, I just simply live here. This is where I was born, but I have no allegiance per se to this place other than like, well, if my friends and neighbors are attacked, I'll come to their aid. Or if they need help or whatever, so, not even just attacking, but like, oh, there's a disaster. Well, and honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have to be in like a given country. It could be just there's a big ass disaster that happened somewhere. Holy shit, there's a bunch of people that need help because some bad thing happened. Yeah, I'd be inclined to want to help because they're fellow humans.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's like why can't we just go more towards that?
yeah, and there's just enough sick people in the world that feed off of committing these hate crimes and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
manipulating people's emotions to get them to do their bidding. They'll sit back in some kind of way behind the battle lines and dictate to what people to do, and everybody kills each other.
yeah. I think what people don't really realize is uh, maybe this will sound a little contradictory, but we can have government without leaders. We don't need leaders.
I
You
agree. No, I
know,
get what
like
you're going for. Yeah, no, you're right.
people would be like, "Oh God, all the leaders just disappeared. They got taken away by the UFO. What are we gonna do?"
Hmm.
Well, same thing we do every day. try to take over the world.
Mhm. No, that's a
You
really good point.
life would go on, you
It
know.
it absolutely would. Yeah, that's right. Like if Washington D.C. was like sucked up by aliens or something,
Yeah.
like the U.S. would still function.
Yeah, the infrastructure is still there. People still
Yeah,
have their jobs. They would still go and do their jobs.
people know how to do things. They're like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, okay, well
those
I'm
particular jobs have managers to manage the things. They
yeah,
don't need people at the top barking orders just for the
no,
sake of barking orders.
no, exactly. Well, it's the same thing with a corporation or something. If the CEO just disappeared, the corporation's still going to function. Like
Yeah,
it's not like the janitor is suddenly going to be like, "Oh my god, what do I do?" The
right.
CEO's dead. They're like, "Oh no, they're just going to do what they've been doing and stuff." Like, okay, well maybe the big ticket decisions the company
Yeah,
makes might be a little off kilter for a minute, but yeah,
we're not ants. Like
no, no, exactly.
the queen dies, and we would just keep being ants. You know, like
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
it.
Well, and that's kind of my point here is that we could get rid of all that shit, cut the chaff off,
Mhm.
and just live our lives and make decisions that are based on what human beings actually need and want, rather than what some kind of bureaucracy
Right.
decides that we should want.
And I think that if some huge culling event happened, like aliens coming to take our leaders away,
We'll be like, thank
yeah,
you, oh my god, thank you.
a mass amount of guillotines are imported from France, or whatever, and then we're just left with government and no leaders. Well, I think all of a sudden we would be like, huh, you know what? Why don't we change a little bit here and there to
Yeah.
make this work a little better
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of leave things as they are, you know?
Yeah. Well, and
Like,
I at that point it's like, well, we should be able to change things and like adjust. Um, yeah. They'd return them in a hurry as the
we
for
don't want him. You can
yeah.
keep the smega.
Yeah, they'd be like, ah shit. Well, man.
Probably gonna return Glenn Miller.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, that's
We always bring Red Dwarf into it.
of course, of course. And Star Trek.
Yep.
Star Trek Red Dwarf, ever present. Mhm. Well, yeah, this is good. I still feel like we didn't really cover enough, but this is such a huge topic that
Yeah.
like I don't. I mean, we could basically make this our living. Like this could
Yeah.
just be the YouTube channel. That's how huge this is. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that would be great. Like if
Mhm.
people were just like, hey, you know what, this is a great think tank. I'm
Yeah.
gonna tune in and get some ideas and run with them.
Well, and
Like,
since now we do things live, like people could come in,
yeah,
jump in, and be part of the conversation.
yeah. Tell us we're idiots, or
Yeah. Well, I know
put
I'm an idiot.
us.
Like,
Yeah. I think it's great. We have this Jennifer Wolf here being our little fact checker and
mhm.
resident Google experts for us,
Mhm.
so we don't have to break our attention to do it ourselves. And
Exactly. Yep.
like
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like that's a good thing to have in the mix. I kind of like that we're doing it live now. That
Yeah. Same here. I think this is well. Yeah. Like it opens up a bunch of different doors
yeah.
and like
We even actually had a comment on the Lightning Strikes Twice we did a while back about
uh, Alberta.
Ottawa wanting to secede
It was
from
Alberta.
or Alberta, yeah,
Yeah.
Alberta wanting to secede from Canada, and I think maybe you mentioned they might need the permission of the other.
Provincial permission or something, kind
Yeah,
of like in the U.S. if a state wants to secede,
and,
There has to
and
be enough other states that agree.
a Canadian left a comment saying that they don't need permission actually. And
Mm-hmm.
I looked that up, and yeah, it's the Clarity Act. They
Mm-hmm.
need the federal government's permission, but the province itself just needs their people in a majority to
Hmm.
say that they want to leave. Doesn't there's no say in British Columbia or like Quebec or Quebec or however you want to fucking pronounce it. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, like, and that makes more sense, I think, than the way the U.S. does it,
I
where it's
agree. Yeah.
like why should I have to ask permission of 49 other states if we just don't want to play by these rules
Yeah.
anymore?
Can't we? Well, because like we had talked about in that, it's like it should be easy for states to leave or change or whatever. Like, why is that such a controversial thing? Like, what's the problem? Like, I don't get it. What
Yeah,
why not? Why not let people leave? Like, should Texas be its own country? Yeah, it used to be. Why not let it go back to that? Why don't we divvy up Oregon and Washington so that Oregon and Washington are like two vertical states now? So the East and the West are their own thing because they're closer in alignment. Like, why not do that? North California should be its own state, and Southern California could be its own state. Like, and
yeah,
like I don't know. Yeah,
money.
money is the answer. Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
like it would complicate trade situations, and all of a sudden crossing a state border is crossing a country border and things
Well,
like that. But
that
it
too
doesn't
should.
have to be complicated. It just is.
I know, and that too. It's like you should be free to travel.
Yeah.
I don't understand this whole like border control thing, like why that's
And
even a
honestly,
deal.
like if a Canadian province or a US state did that, it would probably just operate like the EU anyway.
Yeah,
Like, okay, we can just freely travel because we always have, and like, what's the difference? Like,
yeah.
what's in a name?
Pretty much. Yeah, it's like they'd be able to do their own thing, but I wouldn't imagine that like let's say Texas left and became its own country, a Republic of Texas again.
Yeah.
And like they'd still use the US dollar. They'd probably have fairly open borders with adjacent states. Like it would just be kind of like it was. They'd just be able to do their own thing in their own way. Like uh, because it would be in their best interest.
Hmm.
Like, okay, to go all North Korea and close yourself off is like that's cutting off the blood flow. Um,
The ironic thing is Texas is already probably like the most sovereign state
yeah,
in the union.
it is. Yeah.
So like the fact that they're all like, we're being oppressed. Oh, we want to become a country. It's like, what else do you want to do?
I
Like,
know, I know. Well, maybe just having their own self determination makes sense, I guess. But then again, every state wants that, right? Like everybody wants that. I hope. Um, it, yeah, but I mean, th- this idea that like the states were structured a certain way a long time ago and that is the way it's going to remain indefinitely is kind of dumb.
yeah,
Like why? Okay, yeah, Washington and Oregon. Actually, I was watching some history stuff. Like the Oregon used to be like this big ass
yep,
space, a territory.
yep,
And then now it's like a little smaller state, and you have Idaho and Washington State and da da da. But like, okay, but that was decided a long, long time ago. Like, I think it was the 1800s when most of
yep,
the states were sorted out. Okay, well, a lot has changed since the 1800s. It is
yeah.
very, very different. And so why not allow things to change again to adjust for that? Like, okay, well, guess we didn't really think that the coastal cities would be the dominant force there. Like, who's to say?
Yes, state lines haven't changed in well, pretty much since the 1800s, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, basically, yeah. Why not? Why not change them around a little bit? Like,
mhm.
and why can't there be more states? right? Like, why can't there be Western Washington, Eastern Washington, Western Oregon, Eastern
Right.
Oregon?
Rather than like absorbing other countries as a 51st state, we could just break up our own states into
Yeah,
smaller states, you know?
which they'd be happier that way. Everybody would be happier.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, as long as you have open trade, but like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And that again goes back to warfare too, because it's like, oh well, you know, if the states really want to, the only way is to take up arms and shoot your neighbor. You know, Eastern Washington and Oregon couldn't produce enough. Well, they don't need tax revenues. That's the thing. Um,
Right. Like how much do they need to spend if there's not that many people in
well,
their pop?
exactly. And they have the highways and stuff, but a lot of the highway shit is like federal. Um, well, they absolutely can because that's where all the food is made. I
Right.
think they have quite a lot going for them there. Um,
Yeah, I don't know much about Oregon. The little bit I drove through Oregon, at least in like the eastern side of it, is mostly mountainous. I don't know that there was a whole lot of farm land there.
well, because I having just drove through it, I spent
Yeah.
most of the journey to Nevada and back was spent in Oregon, Eastern Oregon. Uh,
Uh,
there's a lot of farms,
huh.
but there's also a lot of sparse hills,
Yeah.
lots of that. Um,
Yeah, I
but
just remember doing a lot of this.
yep, yeah. I hit the kick down on the truck many times, passing people and stuff. But they absolutely could support themselves. Um, so we have some comments here, but I'm fairly confident that their needs are minimal compared to here. Um, the erosion and stuff that happens over on the western side requires a lot of effort and work, whereas on the eastern side it's very dry. There's not a lot of rain, not a lot of wear and tear necessarily, although like there's a lot of options to privatize the highways and roads and stuff. um, Toll roads, pay $1 to cross eastern Oregon or something like that. um, that's about what it would be. But again too, it's like a lot of these like roads and fire support and stuff, yeah, well, yeah, there's that, but it doesn't have to be government. It can be just like, oh shit, there's a big ass fire, we're going to send our helicopters over there because it's a human need. um in fact,
Well,
actually on the way too, I think we were in eastern Oregon somewhere, I can't remember. um but there was a whole entire hillside on fire, and they had a Chinook. So that's the a big military helicopter with the double
yep.
blades. A Chinook like scooping water out of the river. I think it was the Snake River, if I remember correctly, and like dumping it. We actually got some video of that.
Oh, wow.
It was really crazy. Like I had to, trying to divide my attention, like watch the road, but also this is so cool.
Yeah,
Um,
good luck privatizing that.
well, you just, maybe it could be a nonprofit, that
Yeah,
everybody kind of.
if there's not enough tax revenue to cover something like that, you know, 10, 15, 20% of people's incomes, then how would there be enough income for that?
Well, I mean, it depends. How many fires are there? There's probably ways.
Increasing amount.
Huh?
An increasing amount over time. Uh,
Yeah. Well, you could certainly have. I mean, I think it could be private. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a crowd-funded sort of thing, possibly. Because that's one of the things. It's like, okay, well, if my neighbor's property catches fire, that's not that big of a deal. But if my neighbor's property catches fire and it spreads to my property, that's a big deal. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I still feel like the crowdfunding it falls short when it comes to uh enough in time.
well, the fire departments used to be private. They were volunteer, and there are still volunteer fire departments. I like because it's a thing you kind of need.
Right,
It's an
right. But then
act
they're
of
in
God.
like
Like you.
very sparse locations, like
Mhm.
um and even less so than it used to be. Because, of course, like the more activity you have, the more you need kind of like a dedicated
Mhm.
unit for that.
Yeah, yeah. But that doesn't have to be government. Like it, because then it's like, okay, well, now you're getting down to like, oh, there's only one or two things you need government for. Okay, well, I think we can figure out a way to do this without it being like we build an entire government just so we have these handful of things. I think
eh.
we can manage a way.
Now,
Um,
but even with roads, like privatization, that would never work because who's fixing it? Well, private companies. So you have privatized roads and privatized companies charging the privatized road owners to
yeah.
fix the privatized roads. Guess what happens?
Well, we
Like
already have, there are already private roads throughout the world and they work just fine.
yeah, but they're
Um,
not like main thoroughfares.
Some are actually in like HOAs. Those are private roads, and I, as much as I hate HOAs, those are some of the best roads I've ever driven on. They are so freaking amazing.
Do
Uh,
you remember the house in University Place I had?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you remember how shitty that road was? Well, that was an HOA.
Well, yeah, that's true. But then again, we can't say that government involvement is an improvement because drive anywhere around like Tacoma, the roads are shit and they're government run. There are potholes everywhere. There are potholes with potholes inside of them. Like, the so that doesn't mean. Like, I guess my point is, government is clearly not the solution. Like, it is not providing a better service than what could be done privately. Maybe there's another option, but I know government solutions are
Yeah,
not that option. They don't work that well.
it's
Plus,
not
also
really a
government.
vacuum though. It's like the government we have sucks. Doesn't mean all government sucks. You know?
No, no, that's true. But I mean, maybe even a long time ago, um, it could have been better. But we've talked about this before. Maybe we need to take it down and start over again.
Yeah.
Simplify. Yeah. So we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. We just got to
You
talk.
haven't seen potholes until you've been to Memphis.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Shit.
I'll tell you
I
what.
I broke my car on a pothole in Memphis.
Jesus. Well, I'll
Like
tell you.
2008 Nissan Altima totally demolished by a fucking pothole.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Winnemucca, like the roads were amazing. Like, and that is a sizable city in the middle of nowhere. Like there is desert for hours in every direction. Um, but the roads are great. Um, like, yeah, they're able to manage. Like, I don't know. We could go on and on about that, but
Yeah.
um, I do think I think it should be at least something that's worth contemplating of the idea of like privatization and like, hey, maybe we could just do this as a community thing, rather than it being a bureaucratic thing.
Yeah.
Like maybe it could be a
Community
hybrid.
things yeah, like that's a little bit better. I wouldn't call that privatization though, because privatization invites like corporatism,
Well,
which,
yeah, like I'm saying, like you can have a private thing that is private in your community. That
yeah,
like, hey, me and my neighbors, we keep this road intact, right? Like we're funding the cleaning. We and like ownership is a big deal. that if you worked on something and you've cleaned it and you've built it and you've maintained it together, like that has a lot more value than something that you just simply, I don't know, they take taxes out of my paycheck and it goes there. And every once in a while, there's a street sweeper or some maintenance and things. No, if you do it yourself, like now that's a big deal. And you care about it too. Like parks should be community driven. It should be like the people in the community take out the trash and they clean and they mow and stuff, because it's like now you're going to care about that place. You won't when, well, it's the economic principle tragedy of the commons. If you like, that's why a lot of stuff gets turned to shit, because people don't care. They're like, oh, whatever, someone else is going to take care of it. Um,
Yeah.
but if it won't be taken care of unless you do something, now it's personal. And not only that, but like you will also encourage other people. Like somebody throws a piece of trash out in a park, you're going to be like, hey, pick that up, because well, you're going to have to come and pick it up eventually.
Yeah.
So like social pressure essentially. Which I think that's good for the environment as well. Anyway, we've
Yeah.
droned on long enough, I think. This is a really good episode, though.
Droned on. Yeah.
Brought it full circle.
All right. Well, thanks for deep sync living with us
Oh yeah, double
into
deep sync.
war and ninja moves and
Jesus, like everything.
yeah, definitely covered a lot of good stuff. So
We did, and we'll certainly come back to some of these things.
yep.
Oh
So
yeah.
see y'all next